Welcome back, everybody. Light Warriors Unleashed podcast, episode 50. And I cannot wait today to serve you up Kehla, fellow Canadian up in Canada. But what a powerful, powerful conversation that we are having today in connection with the gene keys, human design, the illuminated entrepreneur, how it shows up in your business, how it shows up in your life. And she goes through my gene keys like activation chart, and she's going to explain all that in the podcast and what that actually means, and the power of the alignment that I'm in intuitively without even realizing that my gene keys state the same thing. And when we talk about the shadows of each of those gene keys that she walks through in that activation, it's so true. The doubt, the confusion, the hunger, the impatience, those are four of the shadows that I work within in this activation sequence she talks to. And that is me. And that is like how I lead in life and how I show up in life, and the power of this. Kehla does a lot of work in this space with entrepreneurs, helping them really understand who they are, to own their power, to own their passion inside of this space of, and to be and lead in this. She like literally is all about bold confidence and energetically, literally aligning in the space of time. And she's got this beautiful podcast called Living in Fierce Alignment. So for those of you that are interested more in learning about gene keys, human design, they do talk about entrepreneurship as well. And maybe you're not an entrepreneur, but you want and desire that kind of information, go check out the links in the show notes for her podcast. She also in here is giving away a bunch of free stuff. So there's a link in the show notes for free giveaways for those that want to learn more about their human design, more about their gene keys. She empowers that through her freebies as well inside of the space of. And this was such an amazing conversation. And I just love the beauty of the people showing up in my world right now to come in to serve you guys in conversations, but also to serve and remind me, and to remind me of the dynamics of this life we're living, and reminding me of the power within all of us. But she literally lit a fire under me today inside of this podcast episode. And I hope that you feel the same way too, being in her energy. So no further ado, Kehla. Kehla, I am so fucking excited about this. I'm already getting like all giddy over here because I can't wait to just lean into your expertise and knowledge and like learn more about this myself, but also really to share this dynamic into the world. So firstly, welcome to the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast.
I'm really excited to be here too. And I love how right when you hit record, you like immediately drop an F-bomb and giggle. I'm like, okay, I know exactly how this conversation is going to go.
And we just recently met through a connection, which I was like, oh my God, I feel like I need you to be on my podcast. And you're like, I'm so down. And I'm like, so excited about this convo that we're going to talk about. And we're going to lean into, the human design aspect, gene keys, wherever we float, who else knows what conversation is going to come through us. But I really want to open the gate and start, because there's a lot of people in my world. When I started posting about the gene keys and like the studying, like I was saying to you before we hit record, like Richard Rudd sends out an email every 5 days, 6 days or whatever with a focus on one of the gene keys. And for so long, I just was like, oh, that would be cool to read. And I like ignored it. And then I made a decision like a few weeks ago to be like, you need to step into this and listen. Like there's an audio and all this stuff just to have an understanding. So let's start with the gene keys, because I think it all plays out together and I think it all works. But what are they? Like, what is this amazing dynamic that people could, just what are they? Let's go there.
Yes. Okay. So the gene keys, if you're familiar with human design, like I really deeply synthesize these two systems together.
Perfect.
So let's say there's what shares these both of these systems is what we call the I Ching system. And this is a Chinese divination text, which is the 64 archetypes. So obviously we have the 64 gene keys. So these are 64 numbers, like numbers 1 to 64. And they are aligned with your planets based on your date of birth, time, and location. And so when you go to, let's say, the Gene Keys website, because they give you the best Gene Keys profile on the internet, in my opinion, you put in your birth information and you're going to see this crazy little graph, not even a graph. It's like these 3 different sequences of little spheres connected by lines. And you're going to be like, what the fuck is this? And what it is specifically is based on your birth time. the planetary alignments with the gene keys were imprinted. And so there's 11 planets that were consciously and unconsciously defined that go into these 3 different sequences known as the golden path. And each of these sequences have a different theme. The first one, the activation sequence, is about what activates you, what is your physical experience and reality. The second sequence is the Venus. So this is red. The first one's green. So the red sequence, the Venus sequence, is about really opening up your heart and coming into a space of unconditional love. And then we have the last sequence, which is the Pearl sequence, blue sequence. And this is about prosperity and how you can be of service through the work that you do. So basically every gene key, right? So we have the number, and then there'll be a period and another number. So that's known as a line expression, the last number in that gene key. And the gene key are the spheres in the sequences. Each of these gene keys has 3 different frequencies. There's a shadow, a gift, and a city. And there's going to be 3 different words. And what we do, the way that we approach these words and these gene keys, because they each have their own auric experience, is we use the art of contemplation. And the art of contemplation, which, also giving credit to Richard Rudd, the founder of the gene keys, created, synthesized this system of the art of contemplation, is it's really about being curious about where these frequencies show up in your life. It's really about being gentle with ourselves and how we process them, and really having compassion and understanding and being patient with how we move through these energetic frequencies. If we're in the shadow state, it's like really being curious, like, how can I contemplate the gift experience and move into the city experience, which is like the highest expression. It's like the consequence of you doing that inner work. And so when we look at the gene keys and the pathways, there's a journey that happens through, and it's like your unique journey that continually happens and unfolds in every moment and every day, week, year of your life. And they come and they go, and it's a very feminine, breathing experience, the way that we approach the gene keys. So that's kind of a long-winded / actually short summary of the gene keys. But I wanted to kind of paint that picture, and I'm curious if that helps you understand it better as well.
Yeah. And I love how you use the word contemplation. So that's exactly what I am actually using the book for. Now I should, quote unquote, probably read the beginning and figure out what my actual, I know the numbers of the, and where they fit kind of. And I know you've got my chart, which is amazing, but I don't I've never actually looked at it from a point of view of studying that. I'm more curious about the gene key that Richard Rudd says, we're moving through, or that dynamic in these next 5 days. It's kind of like the astrology chart, and those that read, the planetary alignment and Venus in retrograde and all these dynamics, they all play a role. And and that's the key that I'm really curious about, is that contemplation. How do I take this and move it? And I've been called, especially over the last few weeks, because it just keeps showing up in my field, to have a better understanding of this. And I love this. And I really adore this, and I use that word on purpose, adore this availability that we have to understand this more, and to really lean into this. And I don't know where you want to take it from here, because I think there's some power coming through you that you just want to speak to, and I just want to pass the baton. Yeah.
Yes. Well, one thing that I will say is, let's say if anybody, and I feel like the people listening to this channel, you're into astrology and the things, I'm not a huge astrologer person at all. I know some, because it's tied into human design and gene keys. But let's say when you look at your natal chart, you're going to see, the houses and the symbols, the zodiac signs and everything. So when you're saying, yeah, I get this email every 5 days about this gene key that's activated, and basically the 64 gene keys also wrap around the astrology wheel, so that when the earth is moving, that specific gene key is activated. So when Richard is sending those emails, it's that gene key is activated by the earth. So it's cool. We have this activation within ourselves in this moment because of that planetary alignment in that moment. And so even though I said, okay, there's 11 gene keys and 3 different sequences, those are always activated within you, but the planets and the world is always shifting. So the activations are always being activated and turned off and on and so on. And so we actually always will get the influences of all the gene keys, right? It's just it's kind of like the multitude of different dimensions constantly happening. This is sort of a literal example of that. There's always these different dimensions happening with the different activations, including the ones that we have within ourselves. So I think the contemplation, in case people are like, what the heck does this word even mean? Contemplation is a balance between concentration and meditation. So when you're contemplating the gene keys and you're looking at the shadow, gift, and city, and actually I want to use your life's work as an example so that you
Sure.
can like see this come to life. So Colleen has the 35th gene key, point 2, as the line in her life's work. And the life's work is like your main energy of like what it is you're here to share with the world. And it's just like your conscious sun energy. And it's just like what you're projecting out and how you shine your light, like literally as the sun. And so the shadow is hunger. Then we have adventure, and then we have boundlessness. So the 2 line is known as the dancer in this gene key of the life's work. So when you contemplate this, it's like when you look at the shadow frequencies, like where am I insatiably hungry and coming from this place of scarcity in the way that I'm showing up in my life and in my business and my relationship. And then when we look at the gift of adventure, being curious, so that 2 line kind of shows you the lens that you see your gene key through. And it's like, okay, well, I'm hungry, but how can I bring more flow and more naturalness and dance and movement to the way that I live my life to create the space for adventure that I can share with others, because this is what's going to light me up, because you're a manifesting generator. And like when you do the things that lights you up, it's like super potent.
Yeah.
And that city of boundlessness is just being untethered. You know, I feel like sometimes hunger, it's like, it can go either way. It's nuanced, because hunger is like, okay, well, I'm hungry, I need to eat, but it can also be this ambition, right? So it's never, the shadows are never a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just a start to the fire within us.
Mhm.
So I'm curious how that like little mini reading on your life's work, how that resonates and lands for you.
It's like it's so potent, you know, and I used to be, and I said this to one of my clients earlier this week, was like the driver and the hustle and the mover, and it was like I was always hungry for more. And even when I first started doing personal development, it was like I couldn't turn it off. Like, give me more books, give me more audios, give me more things. And it was like I just couldn't take in enough energy in that. And I could see that in all aspects of my life. Like, even when you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that day, like you were so hungry, and it was like literally hungry for food, but it was like I couldn't satiate the need of the hunger. And so I could talk to this in multiple palettes, but as you were saying that, it's like the more fun I have, the more money I make, was a mantra I like literally live by in 2022. And I embedded in my energy field, which leans into the adventure side. So it's almost like it allows me to dance, to play, to move, and it allows me to be able to release that driver in business and that hunger to be able to move into more flow and embrace. And I'm still working, and well, obviously I'm always going to be fucking working in this whole entire life. So I'm like, okay, note to self, you know, but like, and now how does it move within the next levels, and how do I really pay attention to this? And I love the visualization of like, is it boundlessness?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the visualization of that. Like, I'm just like, and I feel that, and I feel like that's the quest, you know, and it makes a lot of sense, because if it's my life's purpose, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is with the gene keys is like they're actually, if you look at it from a scientific perspective, like the 64 gene keys align with our DNA, like the 64, there's codon rings, amino acids, like it actually connects very deeply to the body. And I've even myself in my own studies haven't gone that deep yet, but it's there. And so it's not like this lofty, cool thing to talk about. It's actually very deeply rooted into our genetics. And so I love using this in business because, for example, if you were a client of mine and I'm listening to you and what you're going through, and you're like, Kehla, like the next thing and the next thing and this, I'd be like, interesting. I think you're in the shadow of your life's work. Like, how can we visit this? Right. And then I'd be guiding you through, you being a manifesting generator. Like, what is it that you are responding to? Are you actually doing the things that lights you up? Are you doing what you think you should be doing? Right. So it's like me bringing these two systems together and using that as a roadmap to guide the clients that I work with, so that it's absolutely not a fucking cookie cutter approach, because every single person is so unique and we're speaking to their genetic imprinting in terms of their energetic gifts and natural challenges that they're going to experience in their life. So it's a lot of really deep integrative work. There's so much possibility for self-acceptance and self-love, like in all layers. Like, you know, I think sometimes in personal development, we can get so caught in like being the best version of ourselves. But then ironically, we actually reject the the shadow sides of ourselves, thinking like, no, that's not what I want to be. I want to be this. And so we're never fully embracing ourselves in our full human experience, right? So I
Yeah.
love that the gene keys have these different frequencies. They show up in different ways. They show up in different areas of life. And I've really tapped into how this can be a massive roadmap for how somebody runs their business, which is like super exciting to me.
Well, and I love this conversation because we've talked about this before, but like I vibrate within nonconformity. Like for me, everything is not conforming. So how do we have a better understanding of, and I work within the energetics of the soul's mission, meaning their actual purpose, not in a way of like the gene keys purpose, but in a way of their actual actionable items that they're meant to do. But yours comes in to be like, look, this is the play area. This is how it shows up. Like you're in the shadow work right now in your hunger, Colleen, trying to push something forward to create something. Like, how can we move this into this beautiful gift of adventure and create that? And it just, I love this, Kehla. Like, I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, okay, once we're done hitting record, I want to ask her if she's open to like, what if I brought you into some of my like high level one-to-one packages? Like, could we do some work together? And like, yeah, because I literally, as you're talking, I'm like, am I supposed to be doing this work? They're like, no. And I'm like, can I help? Can Kehla help me with this work? Yes. I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation because
Having a sidebar, like channeling conversation.
Yeah,
So
I know. While she's serving you guys and talking about this, I'm having conversations about like, how do I integrate her into the business model to help serve people more? Because this is imperative information. I feel like the more we understand this, because a lot of us have been like most of my life been climbing up the hill, like literally, like I see myself like with nails into the mountain trying to freaking climb up it, when it could have been like, just call Kehla and she'll give you the back route, like, you could like go through the back door instead of fucking climbing the front of the mountain that you don't need to be on. Because one gene key in 5 seconds that she explained it to me completely opened up a whole new doorway. Like this is the power of like that alignment and that embracing of energy. I love this. So yeah, so fun.
I'm really loving this. And you know what, actually, how about this? Do you want me to just go through the rest of your activation sequence? Because this is really the best way for me to show how this can show up in business. And what I love about the activation sequence, I mentioned it earlier, is that it's here to activate you. It's here for you to have the gene keys that are designed to create that core stability for you in your body and also in your business, is the lens that I see it from. So
yeah.
do you want me to go a little deeper? Because
yeah, so like I'm totally transparent in all things, and I tell like so many stories on my podcast. It's almost like Colleen's life work, like I'm just like, let me tell you about the time when I was 10. So like I'm like so open to like all of this, and I think people can actually learn from this too. So yeah, let's do it. Wherever you want to go, I'm in.
Okay, so how about, are you open to me screen sharing your chart? Because I know you're going to put this up on YouTube and then people are going to be able to see it. Does that work?
Let me make you a co-host.
Genius, because then you'll have a visual and then I'll be able to say, here is your gene keys. And this is how big and beautiful they are. Okay, so now we're looking at Colleen's gene keys, and we talked about your life's work first. So now you can see all the green spheres are part of the activation sequence. And this is what we're going to be focusing on today, because the sequence is, like I said, is like, we're really going to tap into the conscious and unconscious side of how you create that stability within your body. Because when we go into the Venus sequence, you want to feel that safety and that stability so that you can open up your heart more, experience that unconditional love, connect with people through relationships, your audience, your clients, and so on. So that's kind of how I take it when I look at it from an entrepreneurial lens. So what I love with, actually, it's funny how your life's work is here, and then we have the pathway of challenge that goes to your evolution sphere. So your evolution sphere is your conscious earth energy, and this is what grounds you in life. So we have gene key 5.2 here, and the 5th gene key has, the shadow is impatience. And then we have patience and timelessness. So I'm laughing so hard because a lot of your sharing has really been in this energy of like this ambitious drive, like that hunger. And then there's this shadow of impatience that kind of complements the hunger, right? So then when we consider this, the way that I cross over the gene keys in human design, the 5th gene key is found as the 5th gate in the sacral. So this is like what grounds you in life, is like the things that lights you up, where you get to find a rhythm and what it is that you're doing. And sometimes it takes patience to find the rhythm, but then when you're doing the things that you love doing, you get to go into this space of timelessness. And it's like, oh my God, 3 hours just went by. Like, what the fuck just happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
true.
the two line of passion in relationships is like you're so deeply passionate and value the relationships in which you connect with people. And it's like when you're in that with people, that's where you really experience that timelessness because there's this beautiful exchange of energy that you're having. And I know that that's a lot of the work that you do through being like an activator and an energy worker. So I'm curious how that's resonating with you so far.
Yeah, and it's really kind of fun. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, I should be taking notes, but I can just go back and like go back and listen because this is so powerful, and it really is, and it really speaks to like the wholeness of the creation. Like when I was out of alignment, quote unquote, we'll say, like I had some stuff to learn through my entrepreneurial journey. Been in business for 14 years, and I found that I was always hungry and always impatient for the next levels, understanding that bountifulness was always in me, or boundlessness was always in me to be able to move through life, but I didn't know how, quote unquote, to get there. And I saw it reoccurring and reoccurring. And I have so many stories that I could probably share onto this of how it was always showing up that way. And it wasn't until I finally learned to surrender in 2020, 2021, and fully in 2022 that things shifted. And now I'm just like, okay, and leading from the juicy energy of the Manny Gen of creating in that. And it has to be full for me. Like, oh my God, we're in and doing that. And when I do that, things move in my world and it just makes sense, but I don't have expectations anymore on, okay, let's get 5 people to do this or let's get this to do that. Like it's kind of like more so here and moving it through. So I'm loving all of this, Kehla.
See, this is how real the gene keys are because you have perfectly and unintentionally segued me into like the next part of this.
Yeah.
So you talked about this breakthrough that you had, right,
Yeah.
in 2020, and it
Yeah.
came through this art of acceptance.
Yeah.
And the pathway that goes from the evolution to the radiant sphere, which is the third sphere in the activation sequence, is the pathway of breakthrough. And the breakthrough that you have is through accepting the challenges that you're going through and that you're experiencing.
Of course. Welcome to my life. Here it is. It's like, it's so funny. I did a podcast on humility. And then the next, like that afternoon, I got the email from Richard Rudd that says we were in like Gene Keys 31 and humility. And I was like, I can't even make this shit up, Like it's just so fun how this is all like, yeah, just it just goes to show us following our truth and really holding it there, how imperative it is in all of this. Yeah. It's cool.
And now that you said truth, I don't know if you're looking at your gene keys.
Yeah, I saw it there, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is so perfect because I love that we're talking about your activation sequence. We're like bouncing off and then coming back in. So the third sphere, the radiant sphere, this is your unconscious sun energy. And this is like what you naturally, unconsciously share with others that you may not be as aware of compared to the conscious sun energy, but other people are really going to see this in you. And your radiance is what allows you to be radiant physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in life. So we have gene key 63.4 in this. And it's interesting because this is found in the head center in human design. And same with your purpose, which is the last sphere in the activation sequence, 64.4. And the head center is all about your inspiration and your ideas and like the pressure to find the answers. So the radiant sphere being 63.4, the shadow of doubt is like you're really incredible at alchemizing doubt into being curious about what's possible and really allowing multiple truths to simultaneously exist. And it's like, what is your truth, right? And I love this because I feel that the deep energy work that you do is like constantly unveiling what is the truth, and then we have our humanness and our ego that's like doubting everything, right? So it's this constant cycle and this pressure to find the answers. So then when we look at the line 4, which is known as friendship in this sphere, again, it's you really bringing this gift of inquiry to the connections that you have in your life. Like it's through your audience, through the people that you collaborate with your clients, right? It's this wanting to share the resources with others and how they can find their truth and be in that state of curiosity. So I just love that. I feel like you really access this, I mean, this would have happened multiple times in life. Like you don't go through the gene keys once in your life. Like I will say that, I just pinpointed specifically when you said in 2020 that you went through this shift and that acceptance and surrender, that then it's like you have the mental space to process and be like, oh my gosh, I can be curious and discover like what is my truth and support others in finding their truth. So I'm curious how that lands for you.
No, and it's before we hit record, we were talking about the podcast, and I said the intention of the podcast is to bring in truth in all different ways, in all different dimensions. And so and one of my value systems, like the top three, is truth. Like living in truth, living in my truth, living in the truth that vibrates through me, speaking truth. It just is, because I've learned through the years, obviously we know it's actually who I am, in this perspective of activation, but I've learned through the years, when I am not in my truth, then I am in the shadow of hunger, and then I am in the shadow of impatience, because I have an expectation on something that isn't of truth. So it, like, the whole thing makes sense. And the doubt, I talk about doubt all the time as a shadow, which is interesting that it is a shadow in the gene keys, but about a distorted shadow from the collective. And I speak to it differently than the Gene Keys positions it, because all of it is integrated in the duality of what we're here to do and understanding of it. But it's like, when you're pinged in doubt, it's like, okay, what's going on? Like, why am I doubting this? Like, what's happening? Because I'm not aligned in the truth. Yeah, I love it.
Literally.
So, yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. You're absolutely living it. This is so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last pathway that we have going down to the purpose sphere, this is known as the pathway of core stability. So if you think about it, your life's work and your evolution are like the common challenges that you experience. And there's a lot of push-pull energy between hunger and impatience, but then also complementing that adventure and patience and boundlessness and timelessness. Then we have that breakthrough of acceptance coming into your radiance and what allows you to really shine. And it's like, for example, this podcast is a prime place where you are in the inquiry and sharing the truths, right?
Yeah.
So with that, when you're in that energy of being curious, especially when there's so much doubt in the collective, it creates that space for core stability within your body, because the unconscious sun, which is your radiance, and then the unconscious earth, which is your purpose, the unconscious definition has to do with our body, and the conscious definition has to do with our mind, right? Okay. So when we come into the purpose sphere, the 64.4, this is also found in the head center. So that's like that pressure to find answers and figure things out, and inspiration and whatnot. So the shadow is confusion, right? So you've got on the unconscious side is like alchemizing this doubt and confusion, and like, who am I? Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how do I find the answers? But it's interesting, because what I love about the shadow of confusion that I share with people is that confusion is simply a sign that you're in a space of learning something that you don't already know, because you can't be confused about something that you know. And so it's like a really beautiful place to explore. Yeah. And in that, you can infuse imagination, because it's like, well, I don't know what this is, so how can I understand it? How can I imagine it differently? Yeah. And naturally, we always compare the things we don't know to the things that we already do know, but that is a form of imagination and understanding. Yeah. And then when we look at the city of illumination, it's like, the breakthroughs when you're confused about something and it's like, it makes sense. It's like those pop rocks in your brain, like, oh my God, like, this is so clear, and it's like sparkly, and you are illuminated because there's that clarity present, right? Yeah. And that relief of pressure of not knowing the answer. Yeah. So when we look at the line 4, is known as breath. And it's interesting because all the line expressions in the purpose sphere have to do with the body, because we're really getting grounded to relax into the body, right? So that breath is really about rhythm, finding your rhythm of like connecting with life, because the breathing, the inhaling and the exhaling is that natural contraction and expansion within the body, right? And when we allow ourselves to fully breathe, we are like fully living, essentially, right? Yeah. So I feel like that's very deeply rooted in the work that you do, is like allowing people to like breathe through the confusion and really, be imaginative with what it is that they feel aligned with, what it is that they desire, what it is that they're here to fulfill. Yeah. Right. And then allowing themselves to illuminate through that. So I'm curious how that resonates with you.
That's like my whole life's work, like, literally. And it's really funny. Like, I was downloading a meditation yesterday for one of my clients who did a massive clearing of energy. And he's in the space of, I think I brought it back into my life, because his mind is like, obviously I don't know anything about his gene keys or anything like that, but his mind is creating this confusion that he can't step into the clarity. So I was like, okay, first thing we need to do is breathe. Okay, that's what we need to do. So like, I brought it right back into the breath. I know, no, like the whole thing that you just said, I brought it right back into the breath. And then I lead them through the breath into, imagine what the life feels like outside of this confusion. How are you? What does it feel like? What does it look like? No, I swear to you, like this whole entire thing, the whole thing is like, I live and breathe this without knowing I'm living and breathing this, like intuitively. And I definitely want to tap on this because it's showing up for me to ask you about this. Like intuitively, I do this work. I don't know it consciously, like it's not in my awareness. It's coming into my awareness apparently because I need to understand it so I could root deeper into this and literally activate it fully in the space of. And it was so funny. I was on your website yesterday. I was like, I think I'm going to get that business like package thingamajigger that you've got going on there. Cause I feel you. And as you could tell, like, I'm like, okay, how do we turn it up now? Like I obviously do this like normally in my life. So it's kind
Yes.
of fun, but yeah, like it's all juicy. And then it takes us into obviously the illumination part where if I can get them imagining, then they're now embodying their light and they're fully stepping into their light. And that is literally what I say all the time. My job is to light lights. That's my job. Like I am supposed to go around the world going, how do I get more of these people lit? So
Oh, I
yeah,
love that.
so cool.
Yes. How do I get more of these people lit figuratively and literally?
Yeah,
Hair
literally.
on fire. Let's go. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you know what? I don't know, the Gene Keys, they don't lie. Like, I'll be honest, like I
No.
didn't go onto your website before having this conversation. Like I wasn't looking things up. I literally asked Colleen for her birth information, like
Yeah.
literally right before we hit record. So this isn't like oh, I was studying this for a week prior to our conversation.
No.
Absolutely not. And so this is what I love is that when we can bring the unconscious conscious, like I talked to you about your purpose sphere of the 64.4,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you see how this shows up in your life. And when we have this awareness of our gene keys, it essentially helps us see the blind spots, the good blind spots and the challenging ones,
Yeah.
so that we can approach our life with more intentionality in the
Yeah.
way that we show up and be able to leverage these places of contemplation so that we can be aligned with ourselves, have compassion when we're in the shadow, and more deeply understand how we're designed to show up. And this is why I'm like absolutely insanely passionate about this work, because
Mm.
it doesn't lie. It's so
Yeah.
true, and it's like so empowering, like I feel like I've seen you light up so many times in me reading your activation sequence, right?
I'm like, oh my God, she's speaking to my heart-centered soul. And like, yeah, no, and this is so, so true. And I understand the dynamics of why you feel called to do this in business and why this shows up for you in that world. And I saw the word in your bio that says illuminate on like illuminated entrepreneur. Is that what it is? Or illuminate entrepreneur? Is that what you call it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's oh my god, I feel so invited that you just brought this up.
Yeah.
I recently literally birthed this program called the Illuminated Entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
this is going to be like my lifelong partner of the work that I do with entrepreneurs, which is essentially working with them one-on-one for 4 months, going very deep into their gene keys and really
Mm.
looking at how this shows up in their business, getting more clear on their offers, getting clear on the blocks and triggers that they may have in relationships, so that you can more deeply connect with your ideal clients. Like it's such a unique program, and it's so near and dear to my heart, because the way that I talked you through this experience today and the way
Yeah.
that you're seeing it show up in your life, like it just really allows us to take full responsibility for ourselves. And it
Mm.
has nothing to do with, oh, you should be doing this on social media so you can get X, Y, and Z. Like it really truly is this
Yeah.
beautiful energetic alignment. So yeah, I love that you saw that, the Illuminated Entrepreneur, because that is my signature program, and I'm like stupid excited
Yeah.
about it. So
You should be. And I love the pathway of that because of the fact, like, so I used to do pragmatic business coaching. And then I moved into like the soul mission side with aligning their Akashic Records work and what they're actually here to do from the tactile side. And I've moved a lot and grown into the space of now holding the spiritual guide and spiritual gifts activations and like aligning them in like that vibrancy that I don't do a lot of the business work anymore unless they're in really high level one-to-one containers with me where they want some help and support that way, and I'm more than willing to tap in and dive into that. And I'm more working in expansion, activation, like inner child work now. Like I'm moving through different energies of the disconnect of clearing past lives and all that kind of stuff. So it's shifted. And when I quickly read through your bio at like 3 minutes to 4 before our call, because that's how I do life in immediacy, because like, why would I do it any different than that? I was like, oh my God, the illuminated entrepreneur. And I was like, And obviously illumination is one of the, like dynamics that I get to live within once I get all my shit together. I'm just joking. I know, but I love the word illuminate. I love the word illuminate. And so that's why it peaked up into my field. So like, what would you, and I know you talked about the package about the work, but what would you describe an illuminated entrepreneur as? Like, how do they live life? How do they breathe in life? How do they move within life? Because I think building this picture for people is going to really make them feel connected into this. And I desire that for them. So please tell us, what does this mean,
Oh my
Kehla?
gosh. I feel that even just it's okay. So I'm a 6'2" sacral generator, and I can't believe it's taking me 40 minutes to say that, even though this is literally like the how I operate in my life.
Yeah.
But being a 6'2", the 6 line is really about being a role model, and the 2 line is like the natural way that I accumulate wisdom, and I want to like role model and share that. So I feel that the Illuminated Entrepreneur, the way that I created this, was very much from my own experience. And so when I feel that I'm an illuminated entrepreneur, it's like I feel unfuckwithable because I have this extreme certainty in terms of trusting my gifts and the challenges that I've experienced as an entrepreneur through my gene keys. And I feel like I have always the power within my hands, and that I don't need to go and seek external validation or seek external resources or more information or more wisdom. Like I feel truly that it's all within me. And like I mentioned earlier, being able to bring the unconscious to the conscious, it is probably the most empowering thing you can do. Like you are truly illuminating yourself and really creating a business that is sustainable and energetically aligned and in integrity with your own values, because you know who you are and you know what you're capable of, right? We gave a prime example, diving into your activation sequence, looking at all those shadows, like looking at the doubt and the hunger and the impatience and that confusion. And it's like, those are challenging things to go through. They're very human things to go through. But now that you can see that, it's like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do and how I need to show up, how I need to write my messaging, the responsibility that I need to take for myself so that I can support my clients. Like it's just such an incredible tool. And as a 6 line myself, it's like I love to create things that allows people to be independent. The last thing I want to do is create a codependency where it's like, oh my God, Kehla knows so much about the gene keys. I need to work with her for the rest of my life. That doesn't feel like a success for me. A success is giving somebody what they need to thrive and illuminate themselves. But obviously it's like initially there's that guidance with me so that people can see it for themselves, be validated, and then have the confidence to move on themselves. So that's really what I feel the Illuminated Entrepreneur brings to people. And it just like fills my heart. And I love that you asked me that question, because I think it just got me even more present to my commitment with this work. And it's like, makes me like kind of emotional. It's like, oh my God, this is such a gift for me to share.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you, for the people that, feel connected to that too, and like the work within that. I lead in the same way that you do. Like I say to people all the time, I don't want to have all the answers for you. Like I am a guide, and my job is to help you ignite your intuition, to trust yourself in the pathway. So I am here. Like I'm not going to be like, go out and play in the field and do all the things, and if you're doubting something, you can't come to me. No, that's not what this is. But I ask you the questions in one-to-one work all the time where I'm like, what do you feel? Like what's coming through for you now? And I've got the answer because it's dropped in, but I want you to pull that from you so you can step into that wholeheartedly and own it. And I know the work, and I can feel it, is the exact same vibration within you, is like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be the guide. I'm going to teach you about this. We're going to integrate it. You're going to claim it, because that's another key piece to the whole evolution is this. I'm claiming it. This is mine, like holding the stake down. This is happening in that energetics of all that and moving it through. And now let's go practice it into the world and integrate it and move it and like shine within it. It's so fun.
Yes. Oh my God. I feel like our energetic dynamic, it just be like create fireworks. Like I feel like with like these little kids like running around, like screaming in a park, like living our best life, and the people are just watching us like, what the fuck are they doing? And we're just absolutely living it because we love what we're doing. That's like the visual that I have in my mind right now. Because every time you say something, I'm like, oh my God, yes. And then I feel like I say something, you're like, oh my God, yes. Like it's just so much fiery energy between us that I'm just like so lit up right now. And it's like first thing in the morning for me too. I'm like, this is how I'm starting my day. I'm so grateful. I didn't even need a coffee.
I know. I drink coffee because I love the taste, and especially because it's like a bougie thing here in Costa Rica, because obviously Costa Rica is a country that you can like gather beans from. And like the coffee I drink is like from 100-year-old plantation of a family that like runs it with 10 people. And like it just like it's a cool story. So every time I take a sip, like I send gratitude to the land that's created. Like, you know, it's a whole different experience with coffee. But like I just like the fiery energy. I agree with you. And I think though, and let's talk about this because I think there's a lot of meat in this for people. Shouldn't life, and I'm really want to say should, but I'm gonna say shouldn't life be that experience of like running around with fireworks and laughing and playing and, you know, being in that because you're living the life you desire? And, you know, some of us are like, well, I don't want to be a millionaire. No one said you had to be a millionaire. You know, all we're saying is living so connected inside of you that you seek pleasure and desire and connection and love and joy and peace. And yeah, we still have the shadow side of the world. It's part of like the dynamic of the duality we're here, but we get to laugh and play and understand more. And I feel like this is a thing like this. Like, wouldn't this be amazing for everyone?
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
this. And you know what's funny? There's a quote that came to my head and it's like, choose your hard. You're either
Mm,
gonna do what it is that you don't want to do, which is fucking hard, or you're gonna continually be committed to doing what it is that you want to do and bringing that to life, which is still, it can be hard in terms of it's like this satisfying, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did what I never thought I could do level of, satisfaction. But it's
yeah.
like, choose your heart. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't like sacrificing what you think you should be doing to really lean in and trust to what it is that you want to be doing, like running around with fireworks in a park. Like I'm talking about this visualization of
Yeah.
chaos in like the most fun, childish way. It's always a choice to lean into that, right? And it's
Yeah.
like there's so many human egoic reasons and layers to not do that in society and shame and all these
Yeah.
things, but it's like you continuing to trust that vision is going to inspire other people to do the same, as it is a form of leadership, and we have to lead
Mhm.
each other into living this beautiful life because, not to sound cheesy, but we only have one life, right? So it's like, how are you going to live it?
Yeah. And it's true. And I love this. And like I literally just made a post before we jumped on about inner child work. I've been called over the last few weeks to really expand that into the world. And I do it a lot in like tight one-to-one containers, but people are coming to me for it. And I just see that like when we drop in to that essence inside of us and understand the essence inside of us, we can play like kids. And I think most of us have forgotten how to play. Like I think we've forgotten how to, you know, like didn't you just come off of doing like a sunbathing at the beach kind of like adventure every day for the last little while?
Oh yeah, I literally blocked off my calendar the last 3 weeks, like 3 to 5 days a week. I've been going to lay in the sun at the beach
Yeah.
after, like, I have to. I like, Kayla, you're gonna work hard in the morning, and you are like laying in the sun, and I look like I've gone to Mexico, but I'm in Victoria, BC, in Canada, and the fact that we have this much sun right now is a miracle in itself. But it's like I chose my heart of like, even though there'd be times I'm at the beach, I'm like, Kayla, you could be working on this landing page. Kayla, you should be connecting with more ideal clients. Like, of course, those fucking things come up in my head.
Yeah.
But instead, I'm like, I'm going to lay in this fucking sun like an oily little seal and soak up the rays. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's just it. So, yeah, I totally hear you.
You inspire me because yesterday I went outside. I was probably chasing some kittens. I tend to have like a cat sanctuary at my house. Like I think there's like a sign on the roof that just tracks cats because all of a sudden all these other cats are showing up all the time. But I have kittens here that are like maybe about 15 weeks old now. So not as kitteny any longer, but still, mom's been at the rescue for a week because all of them went in to get surgery. The rescue took them in just to get them surgery. It's way too full here for animals in Costa Rica. But I think I was outside, you know, chasing kittens, and all of a sudden the sun was like blaring at me, and I was like, whoa. Because we're in rain season right now, and it's been a little bit shady in the afternoons to actually, you know, coordinate going to the beach and stuff and getting a beach walk in or whatever. And I was like, I should be on the beach right now. And then I was like, shit, I got to call in half an hour. You know, like I couldn't. So now like thank you for inspiring me in that dynamic of that movement. And I'm like, maybe I should block off time mid-morning to then go. But I have to watch the tides and all that stuff. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Like I'm just like to play every day in a certain way, like going to the beach. And whether you're laying down like an oiled up seal, like it's still a disconnect and a vibration you're moving through the world. Yeah.
Yes. 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 Because I I really think about it years ago when I, quote, went all in by quitting my 9 to 5 and just like making reckless decisions to trust myself and getting my business flourishing and continuing to grow. I really remember thinking like, what is the purpose of me doing this if I'm just going to make myself miserable by just working all the time? Like that's
Mhm.
not the point. So I had to decondition.
Yes.
It's like that's the thing. That's the choose your heart. Like there's going to be some unlearning to do to really align yourself to do what the fuck it is that you want to do, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, I totally hear you.
I love this word decondition. Love it, love it, love it. Because I follow a lady in Canada, and I don't know if you follow her too, Tanya. She does unschooling. So she talks about how do we unschool the kids instead of homeschool, even unschool them because of societal regimes and the things that we were taught and the conformity of, like, you think about the school system, it's all conformity. Follow our rules and do what we say. No, you can't speak your truth. No, you can't do, no, we're not doing, like, all the dynamics of it. And I granted, I do not knock anyone that puts their kids in school systems. I understand the dynamic. You desire to work or you need to work or all the flow of everything. But just thinking about that word, deconditioning ourselves, and what it takes. Like, I've done a lot of work there as well, just like you've done a lot of work there as well, to hold space to actually flourish in that fun, to actually see ourselves being able to hold that firecracker and run, through the field because of that deconditioning. So I'd love for you to just speak on that a little bit because I think there's some power there. Like, what do you feel called to share in connection with deconditioning?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I especially feel that deconditioning shows up with human design where
Mm.
it's like I feel like in the personal development world, it's always like, oh, I need more. I need another book. I need another
Yeah.
course. I need another meditation. Like I need more. Like I need to add more to my plate. Where deconditioning is like, what am I taking away to get to the truest version of myself?
Mm.
Like stripping all the things away. Some people might be familiar with this, but I've seen just kind of in passing when people decide to become a minimalist, their life becomes very simple.
Mm.
They're a lot less stressed. They have more spaciousness, like figuratively and literally. And that's kind of a form of deconditioning, but the literal example is decluttering. So when we look at a human design lens, or even looking at the gene keys too, and it's like, oh, well, I should be doing this, but that should might be rooted in the shadow, which is actually telling
Mm-hmm.
you that you're not aligned with yourself. So one of the things I love when I look at the gene keys, let's say you're in the shadow and you're like, well, what the fuck do I do with this, Kehla? If you know your human design, you follow your strategy and authority, right? And that's part of the deconditioning because you're coming back to your own inner authority rather than trusting and leaning on the authorities of external figures or society expectations and so on, right? So it's like when you're, just as an example, when you're in that shadow of hunger and you're like, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, and it's like all these things, and it's like, okay, well, am I actually following my sacral right now? Like,
Mm.
am I doing the things that are lighting me up right now? And it's
Yeah.
like you might be doing the things that you think you should be doing. That's a form of deconditioning. You're like, wow, like I totally just assumed that this is how I was meant to sell this offer, or this is how I was meant to show up in social media, or this is how I was meant to work with clients, but that actually doesn't light me up. And that's a form of deconditioning. You're taking away what no longer serves you so that you can literally be illuminated as who you're designed to be. So that's what I feel deconditioning is like, taking away the things that we pick up, like giving them love, because again, with duality, sometimes we need that quote darkness or the shadows or the
Yeah.
challenges to show us what is best for us, right? We need that duality, and that's just the reality of being human and living in a 3D world.
Yes. And this is very powerful. And I've done this a few times in my life, like the material side of things. So when I moved to Costa Rica, I had 3 duffel bags. That's it. Again, I stored 2 bins at my girlfriend's place and I went back twice, grabbed a couple things from those bins and like the rest, like tax information and some high heels. I brought 10 pairs of high heels to Costa Rica and everyone laughed at me and they're like, you do not need high heels in Costa Rica. And I was like, guys, do you not understand who I am? I maybe I've worn each of the pairs once since I've been here almost a year. Maybe, like to dinner where we're not going anywhere. On New Year's Eve, I had to hike down a hill in high heels, not knowing we were going up this mountain to eat. And like it just like it's so interesting. Yeah, I know the whole dynamic of it all, but I'm like, man, I could have brought other things instead of these shoes. But it's all perfect in this landscape of learning. And Costa Rica itself is a whole deconditioning. What do you really need? Like, do you need all these like like labels and all of these, like, you know, they don't have Swiffers here. And at first I was like, I can't believe they don't have Swiffers here. So when I went back to Canada, I bought a Swiffer and all these pads. And you know how many times I've used it? Very rarely, because I'm like, let's just use the broom and sweep it out and just actually dive into this. Like, I don't use my dishwasher. I actually wash all my dishes by hand. And it's just an interesting process when you start to move away from North American societal stuff that we've been conditioned to have more in like materialistic stuff. And you've got to have all these things where it's like, they clean the floors. So I have a beautiful cleaner that comes to my house, and I love it because she loves to clean and she infuses love in my home, and I don't love to clean, so it works out really amazing. But like on a broom, they put a towel, and that's how they clean the floor with a mop. Like they don't have mops that twist stuff out. They don't, like, you know, it's like the simplicity of life that we are remember. And then we're covered in nature every day. So it's like you can't not be in it. And even when you try to not be in it and you're like, let's go get this beautiful house and multi-million-dollar property and all that, you're still pulled back into the root of like what this actually desires and means. So I love that the perspective you brought to that, because and I'm always deconditioning. We're doing it all the time, like even leading, and you can see it through I'm like, oh frick, now I'm working on hunger, like, you know, like, and I'm like, that makes so much sense, and why I dropped a couple of my offers and why I'm fine-tuning certain dynamics of my life. Like, it all makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main word that you really tapped into was simplicity. And
Mm.
it's funny because I could get into another rabbit hole of the pearl sequence in the Gene Keys,
Yeah.
because I will say this so to encourage people to go down the rabbit hole. And actually, this will be in the freebie section in the show notes. There's a 5-day pearl sequence challenge. This is about tapping into prosperity, but it's actually about rooting you into the present moment and looking at the simplicity of prosperity in the present moment, and not always needing to seek more and more and more, because then there's nothing, it's such a nuanced thing, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting more, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a millionaire or to have a nice house, but it's like, is it in integrity with you? I think it is the curious thing to ask. And sometimes things are actually so much more simple than
Yeah.
we realize.
Yeah.
Right, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, oh my god, the simplicity is stressing me out. Like, it's just, it's an interesting thing. So when you said simplicity, I was like, okay, just a, like a little slice of a rabbit hole for everyone to go down. And also just that prosperity does live in simplicity. Like you shared it. This woman comes and cleans my house. She doesn't have 10 different vacuums and mops and whatever. She has one thing that she uses in 3 different ways. It's simple and it works.
Yeah. It is powerful. And like, I live right by the river, so I get a lot, like, it's like the community for bugs. Like, no matter what, I have to sweep in the morning. There's just bugs all over my floor. Like, I don't, where they come from, I have no idea, but they get into the windows. And so she brought one day this just small little brush. So the brush cleans the windows, gets all, like, I walked out of my bedroom the first time she was here, and the floor was covered in stuff. And I was like, where did this even come from? Like everywhere she found things. And it's just so fun to watch the discovery even. And she takes me on a tour after she's done cleaning, and she doesn't speak English at all, so it's even way more fun. And she's telling me about the ventanas, and look at how, like, you know, hermosa, like how beautiful they are. And I'm just like, it is the cutest thing ever. She loves and adores to clean and to be in a home. And it's like, I pay her extra money every time she's here, and she doesn't want to take it from me. Like, she's like, no, this is the price I pay. I'm like, no, this is the value I want you to take in. But I live a simple life. I don't need all of that. I'm like, and just like, oh, just like we can learn so much from so many people. And I'm just like, so juicy. I love this. Love this.
So good.
Yeah, so good. So we've almost been an hour of discussing all these random things that come together that aren't random. But I'd love to just kind of pass you the baton. What do you feel like you desire to share? Like, I know the value of the Gene Keys before I even looked at, like, I just, like, obviously I don't know them, because obviously I was like, oh my God, I didn't know this about myself. But from a personal standpoint of exploration, like I said to you at the beginning of moving it through, people can work with you if they're in business, but you have a very tight container that you work within in specificness of like holding space that way. But what would you say to even people that are out there desiring to learn about maybe human design Gene Keys? Like, where, I don't know, like, I just want to go wherever you flow, like you want to go. Cause I feel like there's a couple things I feel like we need to kind of wrap a bow around in the coverage of this, but yeah, please go for it.
Yes. So I feel over the last couple of years, it's been really interesting because I've gone through my own evolution where at first I was just teaching about human design and gene keys. And then I am just so passionate about entrepreneurship that it became about entrepreneurship. And so my niche is specifically working with entrepreneurs, but I also have a ton of resources for people who might be new to this conversation. And maybe you are an entrepreneur, but you're not familiar with the system. So I'd mentioned the freebies link that is in the show notes. There's going to be some great resources there that's going to teach you about the gene keys, the activation Venus pearl sequence. There's a 7-day human design challenge as well. So if people are like, what the fuck is human design? You can learn about that too.
Nice.
And then of course there's the opportunities to work together. I talked about the Illuminated Entrepreneur program. This is perfect for the established business owner who's really looking to take their energetic work deeper and get more clarity and direction in what they're doing so they can make a bigger impact that's sustainable to their energy. That's a really big thing. And I have some other smaller offers. Like I think you mentioned the 2-hour business intensive, where it's like a massive deep dive for 2 hours, 5 days of WhatsApp support. And it's like, we just get into like something really specific in your business and blow it up through the lens of human design and gene keys. And I do some hypnotherapy work as well. I use gene keys and human design and hypnotherapy, which is really beautiful. And then I do private one-on-one coaching, which is basically even more than the Illuminated Entrepreneur because it's a more intimate container and less program style. And it's like customized to you, but that's another way that people can work with me as well. So those are my realms and my playgrounds that people can check out. And there's a vast level of accessibility from completely free and supportive to high level and supportive as well.
Amazing. I love this. And you got a really good presence on Instagram and I love your content. Like since we got connected, I was like, oh yeah, I love your content. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go there to follow you on Instagram. And maybe today isn't the day you're like, oh, the Gene Key sounds so cool. Like one of my girlfriends said to me once, if I had to only choose one book to take, it would be the Gene Keys book. Like I'd be taking that everywhere. It's like a study guide. It's like a manual.
It's
like
a Bible.
Yeah.
It's literally thick. It's like 2 to 3 inches thick, like a phone book. Like you could.
It's under my computer right now, actually. So like I would pull it out, but then I'd like mess up the whole video. But like it literally is under my, like I don't have an office. Like I sit on my couch is like the couch of like creation is what I call it today in my Instagram story. But it's on a bucket that has a book, and then like so the Gene Keys book is my thickest one, so it helps elevate the like thing. But it's like it is, and so there's multiple books that he created. I only have the one, like the Gene Keys book, but there's all different other ones as well that people could purchase if they wanted. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a Gene Keys book which talks about the Gene Keys. I will be blunt, for people who are newer to it, you might get it and be like, what the fuck? It's so esoteric. It's super dense, but it is the initial wisdom that came through Richard Rudd. And so it's like I recommend it for sure. He also has other books on specifically the sequences, so the activation, the Venus, the Pearl. There's another very small book called like easy short read, The Art of Contemplation. So if you want to learn more about the art of contemplation, you can get that book as well. So he has lots of books that I'd recommend. The other thing I can't believe I forgot to mention is I have my podcast channel, Living in Fierce Alignment. That's another massive hub for, the Gene Keys, human design, and entrepreneurship from a very digestible lens. Because like I said, the Gene Keys book is pretty dense. It's an incredible tool and it deserves, to be acknowledged and read. I just like to simplify things a little bit more for people in the way that I share. So that's another resource that people can take. There's the books. I also have the podcast channel, and then all the things that I mentioned before that are all of my zones of genius and jams that I love to share with people.
Yeah, this is awesome. And obviously we're going to link up everything in the show notes so people can go and grab it. And in the intro too, you would have heard me say that, all the dynamics of all of this, but like, Kehla, I love this energy that we create together. I love our connection. I love the future work that I'm going to be doing with you because that's dropping in, and I've been told that's dropping in. So you will see me soon in your world, and where, I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. But what do you want to leave everybody with? Like, I just want to kind of let you close out the show today with whatever you feel is on your heart.
It's funny because I feel like this is a message for myself, but I know that others are going to need to hear it. When it comes to even the Gene Keys, and I really think life at this point is to give yourself grace and just stop trying to figure it out. And it's interesting because from a Gene Keys perspective, when people are in it and they're like reading everything and they're trying to like absorb all the information and it's not landing, and it's because you're trying to figure it out.
Right.
And it's really not about that. It's about observing
Yeah.
and being curious and being the watcher of how this
Mm.
shows up. Whatever gene key it is, whether you're contemplating the line, the sphere, the pathway. And I feel like this applies to life too. And this is just my reminder. It's like, okay, these are the things that I can see happening, and it's not working, or it's not happening fast enough. And I'm trying to figure it out. And it's so fucking exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I'm just encouraging people, along with reminding myself, to trust that play that we talked about, right? And that being curious. And it's like, what is your version of running around in a field with a freaking firecracker, with, you screaming at the top of your lungs? Like, what does that look like for you? And what kind of liberation would that bring you? So that's what I want to leave the listeners with today.
Love this. I love the visualization on it too. And it's almost like I want to remind you guys, in that is the breath. Like in that is like, I can finally breathe, like, because there's the freedom and that liberation inside of us that we hold. So, Kehla, so grateful that we got connected in the vastness of the universal alignment, how I got to show up in your world and how we got to do life together today, and all the ways we've been playing in the field together. But thank you so much for sharing, all of you, today in the way that you did, to serve humanity and to serve the community. And just like always, I'm going to encourage everybody, tag us on Instagram, share this out. If something landed for you, send us a DM. We're open. We want to hear from you. So yeah, right on, girl.
Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you to the audience for listening and just having fun with us today. It was like such a fun conversation. I needed this. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you so much. And we'll see you guys all in the next episode. So I told you that was powerful. And like, we could have chatted forever. Like, you could just see the dynamics. And I purposely was pulling out different information for all of us to be able to hold, like the disconnection of life. How do we disconnect inside of this space? How do we lean into curiosity? How do we really lean into this contemplation energy within us? And how are we showing up in our world that way? Like, not just with gene keys and not just with human design, but inside of your space. Are you playing in your life? Are you getting curious? Are you moving this energy through? And this was just so amazing. I'm just so grateful for Kehla's gift that she shared with you. I'm so grateful for all of you guys being here. And like I said in the podcast, if this feels right for you, share it out, tag us on Instagram, help spread this word into the lifespan of energy, because we desire that, and we desire to make that move. And as you guys heard, I desire illumination. So how many more lights can we move through the world, and how much more truth can we embody? Isn't that so fun? I'm just like, oh my God, so fun. Anyhow, hope you guys are awesome. We'll see you guys in the next episode. And again, thank you for being in our lives.